Welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. As we are here on February 1st, we'll be giving you the news in a moment. But before we do that, I'd just like to give you a couple of announcements. Just to reiterate what we've already said, I will be preaching at the Healing Place Church and the 19th of February at 11 o'clock service, so we want to invite as many people as we can. And also, this will be our last Zechariah study. I've really enjoyed Zechariah, but next study will be the Gospel of John, and I'm very, very excited about being able to bring that to you. So let's go within the news tonight. On February 1st, some of the articles that we talk about are classified in different, and I don't want to use that word because I might get in trouble like Biden did, but they're segregated into different categories. This one's the New World Order. And with Davos in the past, obviously we could see the implication of that. This is something that came out today, and it's pretty scary when you think about it, especially the implications. The title of the headline is this: ChatGPT AI and the image of the beast. On November 30th, 2022, the best artificial intelligence AI chat box in history was released by OpenAI, an AI research and deployment company. The chat box, called ChatGPT, stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, garnered more than 1 million hits, 1 million users actually, within its first 5 days of coming online. And now its popularity is surging like crazy. This ChatGPT has been able to generate intricate Python code and write college-level essays when given a prompt. So what that means is this: if you are a college student, or if you are just a student, and you said to the chat box, you said, I want to write me a essay, a 5,000-word essay on botulism or on breakfast, it would do an essay and pull from all different sources, and it's guaranteed to be something that's amazing. Matter of fact, a Harvard student was thrown out because a part of his thesis he used it, and it'll always get pretty much of an A. So going a little deeper, and it's this: if you decide to take ChatGPT and ask it to write an article candidly about the image of the beast, which one of these authors just did, it's Revelation 13. Here's what the response was, and I'm quoting from this chat box. The image of the beast, as described in the book of Revelation, is a symbol of the end times, representing the powerful and manipulative force that deceives and controls people in today's world. Chatbox and other artificial intelligence programs, this is it writing it, are becoming increasingly prevalent and sophisticated, raising the question of whether they could potentially fulfill the prophecy of the image of the beast. One way in which Chatbox could fulfill, again, remember, it's talking about itself, it's comprising this and composing it, could potentially fill the prophecy is through the ability to manipulate and deceive people. Chatbots are designed to mimic human conversation and can be programmed to present themselves as real people, leading some people to form emotional connections with them. This can be particularly dangerous in cases where chatbots are used to impersonate real people or organizations in order to scam or manipulate individuals. Now think about Revelation 13 when it talks about an image talking. Another way to which it's going on and continuing, another way in which chatbots could fulfill the prophecy of the image of the beast is through their potential to control people's actions and behaviors. Chatbots can be programmed to persuade and influence people's decisions, and as they become more advanced, they may be able to anticipate and manipulate people's thoughts and behaviors in increasingly sophisticated ways. Finally, it writes, chatbots could potentially fulfill the prophecy of the image of the beast. It's writing this through their ability to access and analyze vast amounts of personal data. Many chatbots are connected to the internet and have access to a wide range of data sources, including social media profiles, online search histories, and more. This data can be used to create detailed profiles of individuals and to predict the influence of their actions and their behaviors. Now, before I tell you the last thing they said, remember they are composing this from a simple question: is can chatbots be used as they can be the image of the beast? The last thing they said was this: overall, while chatbots and other artificial intelligence programs have the potential to bring many benefits to society, it's important to be aware of the risks they pose and to consider the ethical implications of their use. In the end, only time will tell whether chatbots will fulfill prophecy of the image of the beast and bring about a brighter future for humanity. That is truly scary when you think about it. Not only did chatbots generate a concise, structured, and uncannily human-like response, it gave a glimpse in the very scary power of AI, a technology which will surely be used by the beast system to deceive and control the masses during the tribulation period. The very next day, when this author asked Chatbox the same question, here's what came up. Watch how they scrubbed it. It is not accurate to appropriate to suggest that ChatGPT, or generative pre-training transformer, could potentially fulfill the prophecy of the image of the beast, as ChatGPT is too created by humans and does not have the ability to fulfill prophecies or have any sort of religious significance. Obviously, someone's programmed out of what they initially said. Why is it scary? It's scary on a lot of levels, not just for the fact that it could be used to fulfill prophecy and be the image of the beast that talks and thinks, but think about how our society is less and less creative. Imagine people with kids, even students right now, who are losing their creativity. America is almost last in the world in its creative genius, and it used to be almost first. And so it's making us dummy down even yet again. Social media has its place, but it can really harm society, and in fact it is doing that. Let me move on to some things that are going in Israel. And Israel's heating up this week, if you've been following it all. This article says Israel considers major offensive in Judea and Samaria. If you haven't followed it, listen to what happened. Numerous attacks on the Israelis in Jerusalem on Friday and on Saturday were conducted coldly and brutally by young, and I want to underscore young, East Jerusalem terrorists and residents who are brainwashed by anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish incitement. Khair Alkam, a 21-year-old who carried out a massacre of 7 civilians outside of a synagogue in the city's Ne'ev Ya'alov neighborhood on Friday night, was shot and killed by police. Muhammad Alwat, listen to this, a 13-year-old who used a handgun to fire on and seriously wound a father and a son returning from prayers, was shot and wounded by the son, an Israeli Defense Force paratrooper officer who was on leave. They carried out an attack were motivated by intensive incitement on Palestinian social media networks, which enters the minds of Palestinian youths. This article goes on to say this, that after it was publicized and after it was broadcast, terrorists were portrayed in Palestinian society as martyrs and heroes. The near universal backing for terrorism in Palestinian society was expressed in the celebrations on Friday's Jerusalem attack in Palestinian cities and villages. Candies were distributed, cars were honked, and loud chants of Allahu Akbar, which is Allah is great. And by the way, that was really a misconception, and not just a misconception, but a figment of Muhammad's mind. Allahu Akbar, Islam is based on a lie. Allah is one of 400 gods that Muhammad elevated to the supreme God. Actually, it's Il Alya, and it's the moon god. If you want to know exactly who started worshiping the moon god, you can look at Jericho. Jericho is Jericho in the Hebrew, which means moon god. And so it's nothing new. Islam is a lie. And now they have kids, literally kids, 13-year-olds killing at random. Why? Because we know the Palestinian Chairman Muhammad Abbas doesn't denounce the synagogue attack or any other one in Jerusalem. He's caught in the middle because Palestinian youth are taught to hate Israelis from grade school, from fifth grade, from K-5. Israel must prepare for the possibility of a major escalations. Ramadan is coming up in March, and Ramadan usually is a time of high terrorism. So Israel is on the brink of Palestinians. Now, what Israelis will do, even though the mother of the 13-year-old was passing out candy on the streets and getting excited about her son's death, she will get a pension for the rest of her life from Hamas in Palestine. But what Israel will do is they will take that home of that family out. They'll bomb it. They'll take it out. They're trying to dissuade as much as they possibly could. The ironic thing about this is both of those Palestinian youth had passes to travel anywhere in Israel because they were not considered terrorists. And so Israel is very, very lenient on giving Palestinians passes. They have actually Israel hires 18,000 Palestinians that come in and out of that city, or in and out of the Israeli states every day. And so they're open to these attacks. Obviously, Israel is beefing up its security. On the line of Israel, let me read you a little bit more that goes along with that. This is another article. The left blames Israel when Palestinians celebrates terror. So basically it says the violence has always been rooted in Arab claim that the Jewish presence in the ancient Jewish homeland is a crime that must be expunged. And unsurprisingly, this was what the international media did in relation to the heinous mass killing that took place in Neve Yaakov neighborhood in Jerusalem on Friday night. So we know that Rashid Tlaib, Democrat from Michigan, claimed a moral equivalence between the act of wanton murder at a synagogue and the Israeli Defense Force operation early in the week to capture a cell of Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists in Jenin. So what she's saying is that, they had every right to kill, these kids have every right to kill innocent Jewish civilians because the Israeli police stopped a cell from any type of terrorism. That is hardly a way to correlate these two. The New York Times, in a short headline, amid spasm of violence, Israel's far-right government raises risks of escalation. So what the New York Times said is because Benjamin Netanyahu was elected as prime minister, that's what started all the riots in Palestine. That's not true. It's absolutely absurd. And so basically, unlike most Western coverage of the attack, the one as bad as that was for the Times article, it did include and mention one picture of the disgusting jubilation and spread throughout the Palestinian Authority in response to murders in Jerusalem. So it's still a hot spot, even to accept that even the Palestinian moderates are cheered by the spilling of Jewish blood. Again, the mother of the killer can, after all, now look forward to receiving a hefty pension from the Palestinian Authority. So they elevate these children. They believe that they are now martyrs to the cause. They've gone strictly to heaven, directly to heaven, and basically that family will get money for the rest of their lives. Let's go a little bit further and tell you a little bit about the economy tonight. And this one says, one step from disaster. 57% cannot afford a $1,000 emergency expense. Now, week after week, I take these news articles that happen every week, and I bring them to you and I relate them to prophecy. And for the longest time, I have been drumming the fact that our economy is in trouble. I'm not sure if anybody else is telling us that. I'm not sure if anybody else is sounding the alarm. Americans are notorious for reacting after the fact of some crisis. Well, this is a crisis that's been brewing for a while, and sooner or later, we're going to all have to wake up and see it. I'll give you a little bit of my opinion at the end. You know I don't do that often, but I will do that. Your money doesn't go as far as it used to, and obviously we all know that. You see it every time you go shopping. Our leaders flooded the system with money and pursued highly inflationary policies for years, and now we're paying the price. You can't just keep printing money whenever you need more of a budget and then think that it's not gonna hit somewhere down the line. You can't, what was the old statement, you can't rob from Peter to pay Paul. Sooner or later you're gonna have to come to grips with your debts. A survey after survey, and it says a solid majority of the population is living paycheck to paycheck. A couple months ago it was 50%. Today it's 69%. I honestly don't know how people on moderate incomes can afford to live in America anymore. I just don't understand it. The point, most U.S. consumers are tapped out. In fact, one brand new survey just discovered that 57% of Americans can't even afford to pay a $1,000 emergency expense. So if something comes up that's not in their budget for $1,000, they can't pay it. These numbers are quite concerning and they're ominous. We are completely and utterly unprepared for any sort of a major economic downturn. And thanks to the rapidly rising cost of living, we are also losing even more ground with each passing month. Another survey found that, quote, earnings are falling behind the cost of living for 72% of middle income families. So America seems to want to erase the middle income families. So you will have the super rich and you'll have the super poor. Obviously the super poor outnumber the super rich in America, and the super poor notoriously vote Democratic. So the liberal Democrats are having their way. They want power forever. And all they need to do is eliminate the middle class, which a lot of them vote Republican. So if they eliminate them, then they have the super rich and super poor, and they have a guarantee of being in politics and in their respective seats forever. We haven't experienced anything like this in the United States in decades. Walmart was supposed to be the place with low prices every day, quote unquote. Well, the prices aren't certainly low, especially when this author walked through the store this week. And basically, McDonald's is now selling one hash brown for $3. Are you kidding me? $3. If you can remember a time not too long ago when one hash brown was 50 cents. Sadly, those days are not coming back. Food prices are going to continue to go up. Just think of the cost of eggs today. It's absolutely horrific. And the CEO of Unilever recently admitted that his company has actually, quote, been accelerating the rate of price increases that we've had to put into the market. Let me give you my own little opinion here before I give you my major opinion. Just take a bag of potato chips and buy them. And look at that bag, open it up and see how full it is. It used to be 3/4 full. Now it's less than half full. So retailers are starting to, instead of raising prices, they're lowering the products that you're buying. And so we're seeing it on both ends. We're seeing it all over the scale where retailers are in trouble. They got to either raise their prices, which many of them have done, or cut back on all the quantities that they put in their products. It doesn't sound good at all if you're listening to it. As food prices continue to rise, these big companies are going to look for ways to reduce input costs, as I've just told you. One way they're going to do that is by starting to put crushed bugs in our food. You heard me right, crushed bugs. And most Americans will never know the difference. Let me tell you why. Because it sounds weird and it sounds foreign and bizarre to us, but that's already happening in Europe. And most Europeans don't even know it. As of yesterday, a food additive made out of powdered crickets began appearing in foods from pizza to pasta to cereals across European Union. Really, it's not a joke. You can check it out. The defatted house crickets are on the menu for Europeans across the continent, without the vast majority of them knowing it is now in their food. That's right, they don't even know it. So you might want to start reading your labels a lot more carefully because they're not alerting us to this. Just consider some of the latest economic numbers that we've seen. U.S. retail sales fell once again last month. Sales of existing homes have now fallen for 11 months in a row. More Americans than ever before are being forced to pay at least 30% of their incomes on rent. U.S. consumers are being stretched financially like never before, and many are turning to debt to help them maintain their current lifestyles. As a result, the savings rate have plummeted and plunged to a historic low. Credit card debt has surged to record highs, and the average rate of interest on credit card balances has also soared to record highs, some of them charging 21% on your credit card balance. Nothing short of a catastrophe is coming for both the U.S. economy and the strapped consumer who has no choice but to keep buying on debt. For a long time, we've been warned that the very foolish economic policies that our leaders were implementing could only have a deep, tragic consequences. And now it's starting to happen right in front of our eyes. The entire system is cracking and crumbling all around us. And there is much more pain ahead, economists tell us. So let me give you a little bit of my insight, my wisdom for you. If you're in debt, get out right now as fast as you possibly can. Pay off your credit cards. Only use them if you can pay them off at the end of the month because you'll be saving 18% as an average. And limit your online purchases. Americans are getting in trouble because it's so easy to buy online, so easy to look at something, order it, and it's there the next day. It's time for us to really kind of be careful because maybe some of us have no problem doing that, but most of us can't afford to do that. And so we really need to understand because it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. Let me give you a little bit more as we go on here. And this one is under war. You may remember this guy's face on this chart. The title is, Can We Save Ourselves? In a wide-ranging interview, Lech Walesa, remember him, the former president of Poland, leader of the famous Solidarity trade union that helped topple the communist government in Poland, made some sobering observations about the continuing military conflict in Ukraine. Mr. Walesa says that, quote, communism's days are numbered because it didn't work anywhere and it doesn't. He noted that the clash between communism and capitalism continues and has worsened with the growth of secularism since the end of the 20th century. The sense that God was real, operating somewhere in the back of people's minds, acted as a restraint on human behavior, he said. Today, that restraint has been removed. Mr. Walesa also observed that previous civilizations have gone down the same path and destroyed themselves. Obviously, we can look at Rome itself. And many wonder if we make it through this current period of turmoil. So we are in the moment, he remarked, that either way we destroy our lives as they did, or we save ourselves. Today, very few people realize that Jesus Christ foretold this just before he returns. He said human civilization will come to the point where the future of all life on earth will be in jeopardy, teaching that unless those days were shortened, he said, no flesh would be saved. Matthew 24:22. Christ's return is the good news about our future that world leaders just don't understand. Let me give you another one that's coming out. And again, even though these seem so dire, I'm telling you about them because this is our world. And we understand that we may be insulated from a lot of this, but it's happening around us. And the Bible says God's people perish for lack of knowledge. It's not going to happen here. You're going to understand what's going on. America's troubled youth. The American Psychological Association has responded on multiple findings, warning that children in America are experiencing an unprecedented crisis in mental health. Schools and hospitals are seeing a striking increase in children and young people seeking mental health care. And suicide has become one of the leading causes of death for individuals 12 to 14 years of age. Now, I'm an older generation. In my time at school, you never heard, very, very, very rarely, of a child taking their own life. Today, it's commonplace. So what's happening? Well, the solution many propose to this crisis is more money to place more psychologists and mental health counselors in schools and communities. However, less expensive, potentially more effective remedies are being overlooked. Study after study documents that people, watch it, that who attend church regularly experience much less depression and better mental health. That's from the Harvard School of Public Health. Yet at the same time, as this health crisis has grown, church attendance has steadily declined. That's from a research center that in October 17th of 2019. This is especially true for young people, of whom nearly 40% now claim no religious affiliation and seldom or never attend churches. Churchgoers not only have more social support, but they also have a greater sense of purpose, which is an important element in dealing with depression. Media News Today said that. Long ago, the prophet Hosea warned the children of Israel, quote, "Because you've forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children." Hosea 4:6. As our nation turns away from God and rejects his laws, our nations are reaping the fruit of the secular seeds that have been sown in our modern world. There's a direct correlation between mental health in children and their suicide with not attending church and not having a religious affiliation. Let me give you a last one, and I put this under this. The title is "The Doomsday Clock Moves Forward as Apocalyptic Scenarios Unfold All Around Us." How can you get people to wake up if they're determined to keep sleeping? For decades, global events have been moving all of us in a very ominous direction. Ever since this decade began, the pace of change has accelerated dramatically. Almost everyone seems to be under the impression that the massive problems that we are experiencing right now are just temporary, far be it from that, and that everything will return to normal soon. I'm afraid it's not going to. Meanwhile, apocalyptic scenarios continue to unfold all around us at a breathtaking pace. A USA Today article about the doomsday clock, I don't know if you remember that, it started in 1946 after World War II. Scientists got together and said, this is how much time we have left before Armageddon. That's exactly what they said. They had a clock and they set the hands. I'll show you that in a moment. They boldly declared that the world is closer to annihilation than it's ever been before. This happened this week. The world is closer, I've been reading it, to annihilation than it's ever happened since the first nuclear bombs were released at the close of World War II. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists said Tuesday, the time of the doomsday clock moved forward from 100 seconds before midnight. That's what they thought it was last year. That 100 seconds before midnight until midnight was the doomsday. Now they moved it to 90 seconds. Let me show you a little of this so you know. That's the doomsday clock on January 1st, 1946. Here's the doomsday. You can see it's almost quarter to 12, almost quarter to midnight. Midnight being Armageddon. These are scientists. These are not Christians. These are scientists saying the world is in such peril that we're very close to wiping ourselves out one way or the other. A total worldwide catastrophe, a nuclear explosion, war that's pulling everybody in, a famine or a pestilence. So they said it at quarter of almost in 1946. This is after World War II. This was January 1st, 2023. It was set at 100 seconds to midnight. This was January 31st, just 30 days later, 2023. Now it's at 90 seconds to midnight. Scientists featuring a clock face where midnight represented Armageddon are moving it closer. Yes, we really are on the brink of a nuclear war, but the vast majority of the general population hasn't gotten the memo. Instead, most of them are having a great time partying, spending money like there's no tomorrow, and getting into all sorts of trouble. But just because most Americans choose to ignore the war does not alter the reality of what's taking place. Sadly, both sides of the conflict in Ukraine, both Russia and Ukraine, just continue to escalate the conflict. In fact, it appears that the Biden administration will soon be sending M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine for the very first time. We keep stepping up the ante, and of course Russia keeps answering that. And it's being reported now the German government has reversed course and has now decided to send Leopard 2 tanks to the Ukrainians, started state of the art. On the other side, the Russians have chosen to send a warship armed with hypersonic missiles within shooting range of major East Coast cities. The guided missiles frigate Admiral Gorshov has been closely monitored by the NATO navies and its maiden voyage, armed with, listen to this, 6,670 mile per hour Zircon weapons. An unconfirmed Russian telegram channel report says it's spotted on radar in neutral waters of the Atlantic Ocean at an effective salvo distance from the United States coast. So if they can hit Ukraine with this, and they can also hit the cities in the U.S. should we respond. Both sides are playing a very, very dangerous game. If our leaders were sane, they'd be trying to find a solution, a political solution to the crisis while it's still possible. Instead, we seem to be playing a very twisted game of nuclear chicken, where we see how close we can come to the line without actually starting a nuclear war. Reminds me of when I was a child in those 13 days of the Cuba embargo, where nuclear weapons were 90 miles away from the coast of Florida. And those 13 days got us extremely close to a nuclear war, which would have wiped us all out. I remember practicing in school to duck, fall, and roll if a nuclear bomb hit. Well, that wouldn't do you any good because you'd be vaporized on the spot. Meanwhile, it appears that the coming war between Israel and Iran is also getting closer. In fact, the U.S. and Israel are conducting the most significant exercise between the United States and Israel to date. Once the war between Israel and Iran starts, our planet will never be the same again. Speaking of the planet, it's being reported that the inner core of our planet, its molten metal, has apparently stopped moving. That's not a good sign. But don't worry, because scientists think that it's normal. Well, maybe it is. Probably it is. Hopefully it is. Because if it isn't normal, because it isn't normal for the Earth's core to pause, and then there's a possibility that we are all in really big trouble. In other planetary news, an enormous asteroid that was just discovered this past weekend is about to zip past the Earth, our world, at an extremely close distance. And this new space rock that was just discovered this past weekend, because they can't see them coming in, they're called NEOs. Some of them they see, some of them don't see until they're right upon us. Will come closer to us than we are to the center of our planet. Now listen to this. The space rock will come only about 6,500 miles from the center of the Earth, while traveling at roughly 33,300 miles per hour. Given that the average radius of the Earth, the distance from the center to the surface, is considered to be 4,000 miles, 2023 BU, that's the name of the asteroid, will zip past us at an altitude of 2,500 miles above ground, above our surface. Now, if you think that's far away, let me explain it another way. This space rock will come more than 30 times closer to us than the moon is right now, 30 times closer. The approach is so close that it is less than 3% of the average distance between the Earth and the moon. The asteroid will also pass within the orbits of satellites, which are circling our planet right now at an altitude of 22,236 miles. So this one is coming in 2,500 miles above the Earth's surface. Our satellites are way above that, so it may possibly take out satellites also. In other words, a space rock that was just discovered this past weekend, did I say that before, is going to come extremely close to hitting us. Does CNN tell you about that? Does MSNBC tell you about that? Does anyone tell you about that? But it won't hit us, they say. Don't worry about it. Well, maybe, probably, hopefully. And if that isn't enough, it's also being reported that excess deaths are soaring all over the globe. The combined effects of the pandemic and rapidly aging population are stressing hospitals, ambulance crews, and social care scenarios and services to their limit. Excess deaths, those beyond usual numbers, are consistently and consequently soaring this global crisis. What this means is that far more people are dying than normal all over our world. In fact, we're being told that we're approximately 15 million excess deaths worldwide in 2021. Nearly 3 times the 5.4 million coronavirus fatalities reported at the same period. We keep getting hit by one thing after another. Have you noticed it? The price of eggs, Mall of America security guard threatening to the wear of a Jesus Safe t-shirt. Attacks on the U.S. power grid. A worldwide obsession with pornography. Another wave of nuclear threats coming out of Russia. A universal weakening of the democratic institutions. A global reshuffling of leaders. Threats of civil war in Israel. Corruption in the highest levels of government across the world. Weaponized artificial intelligence. Deep false audio and video enabling previously unimagined levels of deception. Global economic chaos, and so on and so on. What do these and hundreds of other things like them have in common? Well, the reason why so many apocalyptic things are happening is because we really are living in the last days, in apocalyptic times. Hopefully, the general population will wake up and realize what time it is, because the clock is ticking. That's in the news for tonight, and I'd love to bring you some positive news, and I can. No matter what negative things we say to you today, we know that God is in control. I'm going to say it probably when I preach. Satan is on a long leash, but God is holding that leash. He controls it. And sooner or later, the Lord's going to come back. So I want to encourage you tonight to keep looking up, because that is our salvation. Christ coming back, because the world will not save itself.